a very good afternoon to everyone. So welcome back to this workshop. Now I would like to call upon stage Professor Kari Desanen to say a few words about this workshop and about this course.
Thank you. It's really my great pleasure to be here in opening the final session to the workshop innovation and things associated with the course. So you have been now listening 5 intense days for really basic theory or basic aspects of single crystal X-ray diffraction, and then it has been supplemented by soft oxymetalates and MOFs and COFs and any other different aspects, a little bit more applied. And now you have had the exam, and I think some of you were quite surprised about which kind of exam it is, and I was very surprised when looking through your exam results, is that how much you were able to write in 1 hour. Because you write much more than I expected, so there were really long answers, good answers, that it was a pleasure of going through this. So, of course, quite unexpected, and the things were nice to see. So I was really happy for how this outcome went, all in all, in the theoretical aspects. And now we have the final session, which is now different, which actually now focuses more on planning and grouping you in the groups and thinking about scientifically projects or developing this kind of a closing work for this whole workshop or school. So that is, I'm very happy to give word now to the coordinator, Sean Roy, my good friend, to open up this session and give the guidelines for you how we will conclude this. Of course, we are here to walk around with you and help, and if you have any questions of any kind during this final workshop, then ask. But the principal idea is that you prepare something and as a group, and then present this, and we will then make a comment on this. So you'll get a feedback also on these things. Don't take it very seriously, of course, because this is just based on a short course. Just that they are for you to open up your mind to think about these things and try to couple all the knowledge and information what you might have gathered during this week. And this is how we go on, and then I think now it's your turn to say the final words and start the end. So please come in.
So thank you, Kari, and thanks everyone for just a minute. So thank you, Kari, and thanks everyone for attending. So what we will do today is we will talk about a few things, and we have, so to speak, like very less expectation from you, but it's just to give you the final touch of this program which you have attended. You have seen very basic crystallography, you have seen very advanced level applications of crystallography in supramolecular structures. You have seen applications in polyoxometalates, in metal organic frameworks, in COFs, and in SOMs. Now, one thing which is here now, I would like to give you something which I felt when I were in your age, we didn't have that scope. So you are all very young. So this is just for you to take it away with you and think about it and honestly take it. So, one thing is very, very important in science that, and also in life, that you need to be very honest. Honest with yourself, honest with the systems, and honest with what you do. And this is about communication and innovation and entrepreneurship. And there are some techniques which you need to know, which you need to absorb and assimilate, and then go on further with your life. So now, basically, if you look at the way how communication is taken, you will say that we don't need it because we can speak. We are all fine. There is no need. But if you look at the way over the past days, how people presented, how they have come across, that has been quite remarkable. And I would like to tell you or impress upon you some basic skills of communication, which is, in many of our opinion, is the key, and which you need to assimilate but build it up in your character, so to speak. So I'm not going to present you shortcut tricks, but I will present you some basic fabric which you can build up, which, as I said, we didn't know when we were of your age. Number one. Number two, you have to then think about it. Do not believe a single word because I am saying it. You have to think about it, and it's a long-term process, and as Kari said it, you don't need to take it too seriously because it's a short time, and in this short time we are going to tell you few things. If you agree with what is being told, then I would urge you to try to build it up in your own fabric of character. And it's by practice, so after you accept it, then it is by practice that you can improve upon. And you also need to remember, in a way, life is also a continuous game. And here, you are the only player. There is no competitor. You are competing with yourself. You are trying to make the better version of yourself. And you are trying to become the best version of yourself. So these are the few things which I would like to say, and we'll start over. And after this part on communication, I will talk about how you can come up with innovation. Now, innovation, as you know, is to bring some new things to life, and this has to be reproducible, very exact, and very affordable. In science, you have scope for error bars. But imagine you have a BMW car, and of the 10 starts you make, there are few false starts. You would not like to take that car. So it has to be always on time, every time, reproducible. So that's a different kind of art. Translating science into technology is a different kind of an art, and science is a different kind of an art. So the idea of this workshop is I will give you certain basic questions. You need to think about it, and then we will have a hands-on approach to it, and then you will be presenting what you have prepared. You will get a time of around 45 minutes to 1 hour. Within that time, you have to close, make it, and you will be surprised when you work in group. It will work wonders, and I'm sure you will come up with beautiful projects. And then you will present it, and then we will conclude with these presentations on a positive note. And maybe some of these presentations which you will prepare, some of these ideas which you will come up with, perhaps can become one day a lasting new innovation. That's the hope, that's the expectation. And during this process, when you are working with it, myself and Tausif and Nidhi, so we will be going around together with Kari. So we will look over your shoulders, we will help you also, and it will be a work together. And another thing is, when you are doing this, we would mix your sitting arrangement up so that you can break the ice and you can really communicate with someone whom you don't know. That's the idea. Okay, so you will see that how it works and how you can be mixing up with each other. Right? So with this, I start. So, and if you have any questions in between, please do not hesitate to stop me. Whatever questions you have during the presentation, and you don't hesitate to stop me. So now, it's not on.
No.
Sorry, there is a technical, there is a short technical thing. So anyway, so now we will get started, and I have given a slide. It's for you to take away with, but I think it's not necessary. So you can maybe take notes, or you can build it up yourself. Whatever you think, whatever you feel is convenient for you, you can do it accordingly. Now, so basically, the first thing is on communication and startup. Now, as many of you perhaps know about myself, you have known a lot about Kari, about myself, so I will tell you a little bit about my journey so that you realize where is it coming from. So I was born and brought up in Kolkata, in this city, and I studied in St. Xavier's, then I was in IIT Delhi, then I went to Germany where I did my PhD with summa cum laude, then I was in the Netherlands and later in France, and then I moved back with a position in India, and I also held professorship, visiting professorship in China, in the US, and so on and so forth. Now, during this course of time, I have tried startups and I have failed. And there is one which is still lingering on, which we built it up. But there were startups where I failed, and there are startups where I kind of succeeded and it's going on. So that is during the COVID time, we came up with an operating system which gives you oxygen on pressing a button. So all this, during this journey, I have picked up tables of knowledge from many people who have been my mentors, and then crystallized this knowledge and have put it together in front of you to think about them. Don't believe them at first. Think about them, and if you think they are justified, then absorb them, assimilate them, practice them, and make them part of your character with honesty. So now the first question is to tell you how important communication is, and I will tell you small stories so that you can listen to these stories and perhaps they will leave a lasting impression in your mind. There was once a program in the radio, and in that radio program it was an open question answer session where Henry Ford, the famous guy of Ford Motors, he was sitting and he was taking questions from the audience. So then there was a little girl who called him up. It was like dial and talk with Ford. Called him up and asked him, Mr. Ford, it is kind of known that you run the biggest show of automobiles in the world, but you know very little about cars. Is this true? If so, what is the secret? And he picked up the question and he answered it in a very honest and clear way. He said, yes, what you said is true. It's right. I perhaps know very less about cars where I have a leading enterprise. But you know what? You can ask me any question on anything about the car and I can revert back to you with an answer in 1 or 2 minutes. And you know the reason? The reason is I will first be able to understand your question, then I know the expert who is doing this. I'll get back to her or him, get the answer, understand it in my way, and make it understandable to you in your way. And that's how I am who I am. That's how I run the show. So you can see how important it is to be able to get your idea across. You need to have the capacity to learn, and you need to have the capacity to be able to assimilate and then transfer this knowledge. So your idea, first of all, has to be crystal clear to your own self. And then you should be able to express it in simple, clear words and make the other person also realize it and understand it, what you are meaning. Because communication, in a way, is kind of a 4-layer process. First is your thought coming up into your mind, transfer of information with your speech, going to the next mind, understanding it, then assimilating it in the second person, and then the thing starts, right? So it's very, very important. And what is also important in this process is that you have an active listening. Now what is that? That means if someone is speaking and you are just there because you have to be there, right? But you are not listening. You are just not listening because you think anyway it's fine, this guy is talking, let him talk, and I'll be thinking about my own thing. And that's not perhaps the way how to listen. So what is active listening? Active listening means you are attentively giving your full attention to the person who is speaking. And in course of that, you might want to take down notes. You might want to intervene and ask questions and make it a point that the other person also feels engaged. And then you have a new wave of communication that is being created by this overlap. And in doing so, you can create new enthusiasm for the speaker. And of course, it's a both-way process, as I said you. Sometimes people like this, and you are very understand. Really like it. Did you hear anything what I said? Right? So the speaker has to be enthusiastic. So when you are speaking, you have to be enthusiastic. You have to be enthusiastic, and I liked what Kari said in one of the lectures to the young members of my group, that you have to be enthusiastic, and you are the best guy who knows this thing. It's your thing. So if your level of enthusiasm is like this, or if you are choking from time to time, or if you are shaking, and it naturally happens, okay, so first time when you go out, it naturally happens, but your enthusiasm is very, very, very infective. So if you are enthused, if you are charged, if you are curious, then that's where you connect. And that's how you open up avenues, you open up doors. And all this needs practice. So you need continuous practice to be able to do that. And there will be failures. And the failures are very, very natural. But then, in German, there is a kind of a doll which is known as Stehaufmensch. These are dolls, you can hit them, they go to the ground, then they bounce back. You hit them, go to the ground, they bounce back. This type of mindset you need to have. For the scientists who are there, you send it to a journal and you all know it, it gets bad. With age, the duration gets longer, or sometimes the rejections reduce. But in the process of takeoff, there is lots and lots of rejections. And you have to be able to first accept it. So, it's not a question of how hard you try, it's a question of how long you can persist. You have to persist. I'll tell you my own story of failure. So, right now, most of you I think can understand me, right? Most of you. And my English is kind of okay for you to be able to understand, right? When I was a young guy, much younger than you, I was very much into speaking. I liked to speak. And I used to take part, this is for the local people to understand. When you are young, there are many fests, right? These festivals, you know, the universities have, Jadavpur has its own fest, Xavier's has its own fest, Presi has its own fest. So all these, Isa Kolkata has its own fantastic fest, and then in those fests I used to participate. And I sometimes would get prize, sometimes would not get prize, but that participation, that was very enticing and very exciting for me. So it once happened that there was a fantastic competition in one of the colleges where I went, and it was on Swami Vivekananda, so I wrote a lot of things. I really struggled, wrote a lot of things, crammed it up, really memorized it, went onto the stage, said the first sentence very clearly, then all I could see were the lights everywhere and a lot of heads. And then I totally choked. I lost my voice totally. And then that was it. I was maybe 13 years old, and then that was it. I came down the stage, I was shattered, and then that was it. But then from 13 till 21, 8 years, I could not even speak properly to the person in class or something like that in a proper way. And then my grandfather was a very renowned person. We had this family gathering, and he invited me to speak on anything, because he said he realized it, and he realized that it's a problem. So there was a gathering of around 50 people in a nice hall like this type, but it was in a family setting, so I knew all the people. And there, for the first time after 8 years, I could speak. I had a small piece of paper where I wrote down the points, and then I spoke without almost seeing the paper. Sometimes I saw it was okay. And that gave me the confidence, kind of a little bit back again. And I was a student of Bengali medium. I was a student of Hindu school, which is Bengali medium. And I studied till 12 in Bengali, Xavier's. I was also speaking Bengali, I was not speaking English. There are people from Xavier's who knows that, yeah, you can do very well in Xavier's without speaking so much English. So that was not, I started really speaking much English in Delhi, when I was in IIT Delhi, and then in Germany. So the basic point, what I want to tell you, if someone like me could have survived this shock, and after 8 years could bounce back, you are much smarter than me. So you should be able to do that. And that's where your persistence, perseverance pays off. Like writing, be it speaking, it's always the same thing. And then you have to understand others. Most of the time, communication or understanding goes wrong Because we don't try to understand the other person in her shoes or in his shoes. Because everyone is having their own pattern. And everyone has their own priorities. Maybe the person who perhaps was not that nice with you or not that kind with you is perhaps going through a very tough time in her own life. And that's what leads to the sharpness. So if you can develop a mindset that I want to understand the other person's perspective, then you could change. Then your reactions would perhaps change. And your approach will change. Because the moment your approach changes, the other person automatically changes. Because most of the time, there are these mirror neurons in our mind, in our brains, which are with empathy and sympathy. So these mirror neurons, in fact, always want to reciprocate. So humans always want to reciprocate. If you are nice, you get a nice reaction. If you are not so nice, difficulties tend to emerge. And that's what happens. So you need to think about the other person. So you have to have an understanding. But then, when you are a professor, or when you are a leader of a group, or when you are a person in business who has to be responsible for many people, there, when you grow to that status or that stage, you need to draw lines. And you need to draw lines in a proper way without violating these previous stories, what I have been telling you. So I will tell you another story of Charles Schwab. Charles Schwab was working for Bethlehem Steel Company, and he was one of the top guys in the steel industry, and he was paid in millions when there was a recession going on. He was an outstanding person of the United States. And I tell you this story, how Schwab dealt with a situation where there was violation of principles. So once he was working in Bethlehem Steel Company, and it was written there that do not smoke. And then he found 3 co-workers or colleagues standing there and smoking. He was passing by them, then he stopped, and then he said something to them. What you would have said if something would happen. You are the big boss of the company. There is blatant violation of rules in front of your own eyes. What you would say? Okay, so you are not interactive. I'll give you 3 possible modes of answers. One is you would perhaps be very, very mad and tell them off. Be very harsh with them, tell them. That is authoritative response. You might be scared or concerned or worried for other things. You don't tell them anything. And then the third thing is you might address the problem on his face. And that's exactly what Charles Schwab did. So he stopped by, his answer was like this. He stopped by, he was a very polite person, very polite but very firm. And that is something which you need to do also. You can think about it, but you need to be polite but firm. So he went to those persons and said, you know what? You are smoking cigarettes. I love smoking cigars. So I have 3 fantastic cigars with me. I give these 3 cigars to you, but on one condition. Next time when you smoke, you don't smoke it anywhere in the premise where it's written do not smoke. And when you do that, I will come and join the smoke with you. So it's drawing the line, making space for the other persons to make it acceptable, and then driving it forward. So like that, when you are in a research team or when you are in a research group, there are certain things that you should never do, right? That means you should be very honest with your data. You have to be clear, you have to be cordial, and you have to be open about what you are doing and what you are hearing. But then when there is a violation, you have to be told, or if you are leading a research group, you have to tell it. Otherwise it becomes like you see the child running towards a rushing bus and you are not doing anything. What happens to that little boy or little girl? That person will be destroyed by the bus. This is an analogy. So as a PI, you have to be clear and protective also for your persons. And when you see works like what you have seen from the colleagues here, it's a lot of effort and systematic effort with multiple people. That's where interpersonal skills become extremely important, and they have to be interactive, and there has to be clear guidelines how you do it. So when I will give you the project to do, and me and Kari will move around with Tosif and Nidhi, so we will look over you and we want to see you discussing but not fighting. It's not my opinion and your opinion. You don't follow my opinion, then you can take the highway. No, not like that. So you have to be accommodative towards difference of opinion and then come up with a better opinion which is perhaps neither yours nor the other person's. And that's how new things emerge in teams. Because when you are in teams, the new nice things can emerge. And you need to have an eye for details. So when you do the project, when you are looking at a crystal structure, or when you are looking at a spectroscopy, you have to be very, very careful so that you don't miss out on the details. And details are where the devils or where the golden things lie hidden. And that's what you need to keep in mind. There is a story of Roosevelt, President Roosevelt and Chamberlain. So President Roosevelt had ordered a car, which was quite nice, and Chamberlain, that time the chief of the car company, he not only delivered the car, he had a box made with the name of Roosevelt engraved on it or embossed on it. And the president had a look at the whole thing, and finally he thanked Chamberlain, saying that you have done it so wonderful and so kind of you that you have even embossed my name on this trunk of the car. So this is the level of finesse and eyes for details that a leader has when the leader is looking. And leader is not someone who is assigned to the post. A leader is someone who becomes a leader just by her way of communication, her way of understanding the other person, and her way of convincing the other person. And you don't have to believe me, but I think you will hear something from Kari as well later on after I stop, and you will see his voice will also perhaps resonate with this type of approach. And that's true for anyone. Because whenever you see people who have scaled great heights, they have a very good eye for detail. And if you do not have your own eye for detail, you make sure in your team you have someone who has this eye, who can protect you from your blind spots. So that's another point. You have to be very much aware of your weaknesses. You can ask your friends whom you trust, because this is very, very, very important, because it is very close to you, and your heart, because it's your character, your drive and everything. And one has to be candid and frank and honest. You can ask your friend or find a mentor who can tell you without hurting you that these are your weaknesses. And when you get to know these weaknesses, you can be aware of it. And as it is said in Buddhism, Gautam Buddha said it, that the moment you are aware of any vice, 50% of that vice automatically disappears because you become aware, you become awakened. So these are the few things which I wanted to tell you. And again, these are not shortcuts, but these are the attributes which you can think, and if you agree, if you think these are reasonable, build them in your character with honesty, and then practice. And then it will be wonderful, maybe from these 40 people out there, if one person becomes someone very different, someone very fine and great. That day we will consider our efforts really rewarded. And it's a long journey. You will have at least maybe 20 years to go in this journey till you realize it. So there is no shortcut. But then you can think about it. And at times you will see in this process when you follow, because this is a process, when you follow this process, you will find it very odd. Very odd in the sense that life seems very, very difficult, very different and all, because you are doing an uphill journey. But then, it's always, like as Steve Jobs said, don't forget to connect the dots. When you are up there, even in 5 years' time, look back what you were 5 years before, and I'm sure you will find a positive growth. There might be some dip, but usually the growth curve is like this, a little bit, right? So you go up, then again there will be a dip, because you're trying something new, something different. Then again you have to restart and to go on and try more and then succeed. So with this, I will stop, take a break, and I would like to tell you that there is a new thing which is out there, is design thinking. So that means you can, in a way, design your journey and follow it up with rigorous and honest follow-up. And then, in course of this journey, you will change, or you change. And when you look back, you will see that the place when you were there, maybe 5 years before, perhaps you are struggling or whatever, you will see that it was the part of the process when you are growing. It is exactly like solving a prison structure. You initially are halfway between, you find some ugly structures. And then the idea is not to get carried away, but to stick with your open brain, open mind, solve it until the beautiful structure emerges, as we have seen in the earlier classes. So life is exactly like this. And with this kind of design thinking, you can have a new innovation, a new innovative idea, where there are techniques to do it, and we will discuss this in the next part. And then we will start with you, where you will be applying hopefully these skills in a very short span of 1 hour, and then try to come up with new ideas. And you will work not alone, but in groups. And in these groups, you will have people who will complement each other, but that has to emerge. So that's the idea of this workshop. Because everyone have their own strengths and own weaknesses. So the group idea is that even in a short span of time, even with diverse people, and you will see it, that how nice projects can emerge. So with this, I stop. Now I would like to request Kari to say a few things if he wants, or if you have questions, to ask me. So Kari, you want to say? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom, for this really thoughtful words. And I can just compliment and say everything, and I fully agree him that becoming something is not an easy way, because the point you don't know when you start from this point in which point you will end up. But in science, of course, the idea is that we have to have a target, we have to have ideas, we have to have the knowledge. And when we have it, this is what we are doing. We are studying first. And when we have studied enough, then the information, it matures in your brain, your head, and so on. You get ideas, you learn, you are starting to open your view. You start seeing broader. So at the beginning, you might look here in this room at one chair. Then you learn more, you start looking further, looking more, you see, there's a row of chairs. And then it gets further and further, you learn more, you study a little bit more, and then you realize, okay, there are additional rows of chairs in here. And that happens to a certain point, but then there will be something interesting happening. Then you realize, it's a lecture hall. It has a function. There is individual components here, like chairs, but then as the individual, they are nothing, but then you join them into a larger thing, a function emerges. And then when we have these, we realize that the chairs as a group, as a function, related to a room, the become as a lecture room, then it means that, okay, what happens inside there is an additional function. So whatever is delivered in the lecture hall is like a function of a function. And then when you go further, that creates a circle. This is kind of what there's always saying, that growing forward in understanding, and as a person is really like this. So it goes forward, sometimes it goes like this, it sometimes slips down, but in principle go like this. So the more you learn, the more you absorb, the more ideas emerges automatically. And I can assure you that at the beginning it's really difficult to jump out from the textbook, let's call it like this. You can repeat it. Yes, I can write it down. That exactly, the book said that it's this. And this is of course what we have to do in the beginning. And this is actually one of the ideas of my teaching and this course, and so on. Maybe some of the questions were implying this, that it's not so important to write exactly what is stated somewhere, but to show the understanding. That you have understood this, because then the idea is that sometimes repeating something, it's just it's like a copy of something, and then you can repeat the copy. But then it doesn't bring anything else. But if you are able to do it so that you understand it, you might understand it differently, slightly differently, or you understand it exactly how it's meant to be understood, then this will not lock you in thinking. And this is the idea that you can actually jump out of the box. You can get really an idea, yes, I can do certain things with this kind of idea. And this is of course what we think about science. In science we are looking for targets. Let's take here that I really liked yesterday the Rahul Panelia's talk about the bamboo station. And he made a joke that Kari don't understand this. I understand. Very well. But the point, I don't understand the bamboo sticks, but I understand the very similar things. Because in Finland we have similar sticks like this bamboo, but these are used in the fields to dry hay. So this is cut, the hay is cut, it's put into this long wooden rods, it's piled there, and it's kept in the sun, that is get dry. Then you take it out and put it away. But that's done. It's like a bamboo grows, and then it's cut, and something is made there, and then it lies around. But so happens with these piles, when the grass is grown or dry, so it's taken out, and then these are put in a pile or something. And then it's okay that the piles are not useful at all. But then, this is a true story, then the person will take these piles and make a fence out of them. So they use completely different function for that one. It was meant for this, but it was not used anymore. They were lying, we don't anymore dry the hay in this way, and they were lying dormant. You didn't use them anymore. But they were there. And there somebody came, okay, maybe I'll start taking and putting in this direction like this, I will build a fence. And you can find these fences in them. And the fence is called, according to this wooden part, it has a specific name. And everybody then knows, what is this? You don't have to describe, you just fence of that. So everybody knows. And it has specific structure and so on. It's not crisscross like this. They're always in a certain point. And the emphasis is here that you have a lot of these things in front of you. You already have them. But the idea is to try to look them from the different angle. Try to look them not the normal way, to look it from the thing in there. I know that maybe you know that there is a famous cartoon, American, it's called Garfield, and it's a little cat, this kind of a thing, but it's a little bit stuffy, so it's a little bit like round. And there's always hope about this, and they said, okay, I'm not overweight, I'm under tall. So that is another way of looking things. So the idea is there that you have you're looking at the same thing with a different eyes, you can describe it differently. And this can then bring up new ideas. Like now, I think we will do this later on, that I'm not sure how Tomas has been thinking about this. Are you given a target to look on it? Or will you decide yourself within a group to look into something which is now based on the thing what you have been hearing? Or it also could be something completely different. So you could think about, okay, I was inspired by this course of thinking, let's do it like this. Maybe you have something on your mind already, and then it's okay, yes, and then your group agrees that yes, okay, let's now think about that don't use these techniques at all, let's try to approach that from the different angle. And these all are absolutely acceptable. This is actually the idea. And don't be scared, these things. We are not expecting Nobel Prize, not yet, but next week. Oh, really, this is what we have been doing also similar exercises in my group. And at first, you're completely stuck. You think what to do, but somebody in a group has to why, hey, let's look into this. Would this be an idea? Somebody has to throw the seed in there. And then you start to develop this kind of a thing. Okay, the seed comes there will be this, and then it becomes a flower. And in this way we work. And this is really the idea, is to open up the mind of thinking, improve thinking, and this kind of a thing. And especially everything what is said here is very important. Communication. If everybody is there silent, nothing happens. But it's not nice that one person speaks and the other will listen, because then it's not the group. It's a single person who have then somebody there surrounding. So discussion, thinking about this kind of a thing, there will be more active speakers and less active speakers, but actually that is the idea of how it develops in the group. And I could talk like really a lot of these things, but I think the idea is that time is running. We will have a short, maybe a break now, a tea or coffee break, and then we will start things. And you can start thinking already now how it would go on. I don't know how the grouping is done. Maybe the organizers will do it. So you, proper group, and let's see how it is. But they have thought about it. So now we will have a break. For how long? At 3 we start, so that it's about 7 minutes now. So then we come here at 3 o'clock. Thank you.
session of 5 days, you do need to give one thing to us, okay, us honest feedback. Be it the worst event or be it the best event that you have attended, but whatever it is, just spill out your beans and give us a feedback, and the feedback forms will be distributed later after this event. So thank you all.
I got it. You are
I think the volunteers would also like to participate in this game, so just hunt the volunteers down who are willing to participate. Okay.
You have 4 options, so you can take one of one.
So what was the feeling for you now with the group design assigned to you? What was the feeling? Okay? Okay. So that's, if it's okay, if it's really okay, then we freeze that. Or if it's not okay, then we can do something else. No, but it's fine. So the way how you are sitting is totally fine, but I see some changes in the positions. So the changes in the positions are very interesting, and maybe it's responsive, but whatever. So yeah. So anyway, now I will talk a little bit about innovation funnel and about innovation, and then we will do the grouping, and then you will come up with your own design of an innovative project. That's the idea. So it can be, for example, just a minute, I changed the mic. Okay, so now talking about innovation, there are certain ways to look at it. There are specific certain ways to look at it, and the way to look at it is a little bit different from the way how you do science. It's slightly different because, for example, and this can be a way in which you can also come up with your own designs for scientific projects as well. You have seen the picture of Louis Pasteur, right? Yesterday Devajyoti showed you Louis Pasteur. And Louis Pasteur is my hero in science because he looked at applications and then with high science solve those problems. For example, he was interested in enology, study of wine. And that's how he came. He was from Strasbourg, that area. So he came with the idea that it is, with the champagnes and things like that, the bottles were exploding. So then he came up with the idea, what is happening with fermentation. He was the one who came up with the idea that it is the germs that carry diseases and not anything else. So these type of thinking and also the handedness he found in the tartar crystals, the tartaric acid crystals, which is formed in the wine vats. And from there he came up to study handedness, which is now a cornerstone of pharmacology and chemistry and all. This is a totally field of its own. So there are ways okay, so I think this is perhaps better. I was told to change the mic. So now he came up with this type of beautiful ideas on innovation and their application so as to form new directions in science. Now as scientists, there are always, perhaps from the presentations you have seen so far, there are always two types of sciences. One is the basic sciences and the other one is the applied sciences. But there is no such demarcation between basic and applied sciences. They go hand in hand. You have seen, for example, how to solve crystal structures. The development of the field was totally basic sciences, but also applied sciences at its best. So there was a very nice discussion on funding in the United States, which direction it should be funded. So then there was a discussion and a debate that went on for days, where Donald Stokes, he was then the dean of Princeton, so he came up together with consensus that funding should perhaps go mostly to the direction which is both fundamental as well as applied. And he called that, he divided it into quadrants, and he called that, so if you have one axis, which is the innovation axis, and another axis, which is the epistemology or creation of knowledge axis, then you have the corner, the right-hand corner, where epistemology and innovation are at highest. He said that should be the direction where funding should go. So he called that Pasteur's quadrant. So if you have a chance, read the book, Pasteur's Quadrant. It's a beautiful book for scientists and budding scientists like you. Now you will say, okay, how do I come up with an innovative project? And there is a framework, and I'm going to give you this framework right now, which you will work together. So first of all, you have to ask the question, what is the problem that you are going to address? Instead of looking for it in a different way, you have to ask with an open mind, what is the problem that I am facing now? Generally, without science or with science, the question remains the same. So you ask, what is the problem? Now I will take the example which Kari was mentioning when we were meeting Sundays before, of iPhone. So I will take iPhone as one of prototypical example and show you what they did. So first question, what is the problem? So just to make it understandable to you, and these questions are very important. So you should absolutely convince yourself that you understand these questions, because then you can do the exercise. And this can have two folds. One is in basic science, you can also define, this will be known as the knowledge gap or the gap areas which you are going to find. But in general innovation term, that is, what is the problem, is your product. How it is your product? Because for example, with iPhone, it was like this. People had this unique phones, right? And internet, right? And they had email, they had camera. All these were separate in their own right, and they were doing very good. Then Steve Jobs comes and he asks the question that why I have to carry so many gadgets to be complete on my own when I'm going somewhere. So he merged essentially phone call, so telephone, internet, camera, music, all under one umbrella. So that's how, and he asked again and again, that is this fine? And then they developed the product. So this made products which you perhaps have never seen, top products like Kodak's camera, films, obsolete. Sony's camera, obsolete. So it killed phones also. There were nice phones like Nokia, Ericsson, all these phones went off business. So defining what is the problem is the key. And that you know it best or your grandmother knows it best. It's not that you find a new process in your lab and you say, okay, now I cook back the problem and I say this is the problem. It might be fine, but then next question is, who has the problem? It will not be able to stand the test. So this is in fact innovation funnel. This is what is known as innovation funnel. So you have to run the idea through these 4 acid tests and run it again back and forth, loop it through until you have arrived at an idea which is perhaps your $1 million product or your $1 million service. So first you ask, what's the problem? Then his question was, who has the problem? What did he get? He saw telephone users, camera users, mobile phone users, internet users. They all have this problem. Right? So this is what is the product, in other words. So if you write a business plan, a proposal, this becomes what is the product. Then who has the problem is your market survey or market analysis. So that's your market. You are defining your market. Clear? So iPhone, for example, passes this one. What is the problem? It also passes gloriously who has the problem, because it's a huge market. Lots and lots of people are waiting to receive such a product when it exists. It was not existing. That you also have to keep in mind that. So he had to bring this product, bring this idea to the market. So then the next question is, how is the problem solved? Most likely, whatever problem you have thought of has already an answer in the market. Most likely it exists. You perhaps do not know it, but it exists. So most likely it will not survive. How is the problem solved? So for example, for iPhone, if you ask this question, how is the problem solved? Your answers are mobile phone, telephone, internet, computer, desktop, and all this. So that means the problem is still not solved. You understand, right? So I will tell you another thing. So then the question is, how can I pass this third acid test? There are 2 very smart guys, Rene McGurn and Chris Chan. So they came up with the beautiful book of Blue Ocean. What is Blue Ocean? He talked of making competition obsolete. So that means passing this third test. What did they say? They say that you look at the industry. For example, you perhaps have seen circus, right? Or maybe you have not seen circus. So there was circus, for example, and then there were also very fancy shows, like with lights and all, which are like the variety shows, which is popular in Europe, right? So it's also there here, to some extent less, but it is there. So these guys, a group of young guys like you, came up with the idea and studied this. And they say the problem with this circus is only senior generation people, they are going to the circus because these animals and this and that, it's not really friendly, they don't feel comfortable, so young people stop going to the circus. And these variety shows are mostly for the senior and the old people. So they ask the question, these are the pain points. So can I remove these pain points? And when they removed these pain points, they created what became a later, much nicer. You do not perhaps know it because it was before your age. So Cirque du Soleil. This was a fantastic innovation which had all the elements of circus, all the elements of variety show, and it was clean, it was neat, and people bought it. Right? So that means you have to identify the pain points in your problem to avoid that how is the problem solved. To avoid or pass this question or this test, how is the problem solved. There's another thing. For example, wine I'm giving these examples from Blue Ocean, by the way. If you have interest, you can read this book. It's a nice book. It's a management book. Very nice book. So the second thing was with wines. Now wines became so rich and so complex that young people or simple-minded people, they were feeling scared to drink wines. Because it was rich, complex, you have to know the aroma, you have to know the note, you have to know the hint of caffeine, whatever is there, then with a slight oaky touch and with a lychee finish. So all these arcane words, these difficult words, made wine very intimidating. And on the other hand, the price point was also very high. The price was very high. So classification of wine and price of wine, these two were the pain points. A bunch of young guys from Australia, they identified this. And they wanted to bring back young people to wine drinking. What did they do? They killed these 2 points. They started selling wines as red wine and white wine. That's it. No varietal, nothing. Just red wine, white wine. And because they were from Australia, they put a kangaroo picture. No seal, nothing. Just a big yellow-tailed kangaroo. That was their logo. It was jumping out of the bottle. And then the United States young people first picked it up because it was such a nice drink. They could go to the bar, they could go to the places, drink this, and then this whole dimension of complexity was removed. It brought in new customers. It brought in new users in there. And the ease that it brought in was another thing. So these are 2 case studies just to tell you how is the problem solved, how you can pass it. That's how they created new business, and this is how blue oceans are created, meaning that you make competition obsolete. So you don't compete, your competition is just obsolete. You're not competing at all with anybody because your product definition is such that you do not have any competition. And that's what is how you do it better. That's the 4th. So that wine guys did it by simplifying. Cirque du Soleil guys did it by also simplifying. iPhone guys, of course, did it by creating a totally new thing which was not out there. Okay? So now what you have to do, you have to think of problems. I know you are tired, but think of problems in a simple way. Take a piece of paper and write down what are the problems. What are the problems that you can think of? And don't confine yourself to social problems. Because of course there are social solutions. So for example, some solutions are social solutions, but try to use science in there. And in this way you can also frame project problems, scientific project problems. And you can do it by running it through this innovation funnel. So once you write down what is the problem, then have a disputation or argument whether this has somebody who still has the problem, then how is the problem solved? If someone says no, it's solved, then you say how is it solved? Then try to kill your idea, and then finally how do you do it better? You come to your own idea. Okay? So you do it, and when you do this, there will be, I expect or I believe, there might be heated discussions. So that's where you try to apply your communications thing, what I said you in my last lecture, right? So you merge this together. You have already felt the heat when we proposed a grouping without your permission. And that's also another way to look at it. That means there is resistance, that means you don't want to do it. But we will do it in a similar way, but not giving the groups like what has been given. It could have been done that way, but we would request you now not to move from your seats and have 6 partners in there how you are sitting, and that will form the groups. Okay? So 6 people together, not hopefully after this reshuffling idea, maybe people move away from friends. The idea is not to sit with your friend. The idea is to make new friends. Okay, so with this, I will stop, and before you start moving, you should not move. Just it's frozen. And then that's the group. But before you start, I request Kari to say a few words on this, and then we can start with the innovation exercise. Thank you. And then we will go around and we'll do it. So it's like a game. No moving.
Okay, yes, I will be very quick because of course I'm not an expert like these on these innovation things. But that is really, I will give you a different aspect on this iPhone. I fully agree with this kind of a thing, that if you are able to follow this and apply it also to scientific problems, the idea, what is the problem? It could be scientific. Let's say capturing something, or creating a cancer drug, or doing anything like this. You can approach this in a project way. You will not create a company or anything of this, or product. You might bring that solution, the final one there is a solution for this. You, in essence, develop that as a product. The way of solving something could be there. And I can tell you the story what happened with Nokia and iPhone. This also is a very absolutely true what Sean was saying, that Steve Jobs was a very clever guy doing this touch phones and merging all these things in there. But actually Nokia already had a touch phone. Nokia already had an iPad. They had millions of innovations. The guys had done a huge work there on background. But then the point in there is that the big bosses there who were on top of these clever guys didn't believe this. And now there is a museum of unpublished Nokia inventions. And all these things what we now have, which are now iPhone products, were done by Nokia. But never get passed through because somebody was blocking. We are lucky in that sense that when you group and create this, we will not block your ideas. But in companies, when you do this, they are doing the same thing, of course. All the time inside companies, they do this, because this is the process of developing things. But the point there, if there will be a too large gap between the innovative guys who have the new, even crazy ideas, then there would be persons up on their upper side which they don't believe this. And that is the idea why many of these great innovations have been rediscovered, but over 10, 20 years later, because at that time nobody believed. So that is the idea, that have strange ideas, develop strange things, think orthogonally, think out of the box, and present these things. Because it might be that sometimes they will be true, sometimes they are not. You always miss a hit and so on. But as was saying, it was really like a learning process. You learn at the same time what is happening. So that's the idea. That is the other side of the innovation. It is the actual idea that innovation can be a solution to something. That means that it's not a repetition already known. It is not like a continuum of something and there is a solution. It's not like a mathematical equation that you start from something and then when you do it at the end is the answer. No. The innovation there is that there is like a quantum leap or something, that something of this comes out, something new. And then you can call it an innovation. So also solution, something new way of solving things can be also, and it is. But this same applies. So we can really use Thursdays and try to apply these both things, the communication skills, this is the primary hot thing, and then what to do with the communication skills when you try to develop this. And now, of course, the ideal target here is to look for some kind of a mini project, mini idea, and try to develop it. How it is. Look first for what is the problem. And you can't say there's no problems, because there's always problems. And that's the idea. But of course, it doesn't have to be a problem. It might be an intriguing interest. And then you solve it. And that's the idea. But I think with these, it's already 3:30, so I think now it's time to go in there and then do the round. Okay, now that's the case.
So you have the way how you are sitting. So the way how you are sitting, be there in that way. And Tosif and Nidhi and me and Kari, we will go around helping you. So the idea is there are 36 people, I guess. And so each group will comprise of 6 persons. And you can choose a name for your own group, whatever you want. And then come up at the end of 1 hour with a presentation. So from 45 minutes to 1 hour, you try to finish it off, because within 1 hour you should be ready with your presentation. A presentation means we will give you chart papers. We will give you chart papers, and in these chart papers you will sketch your idea. And that's the whole scope. So you can make space for yourself, because there are empty places in front row. So please come to the front row. 6 people at a go. So the way how you are sitting, you can sit like that and in groups of 6. So the time starts now. You make your group and then we will continue and we will come to you. Thank you.